and welcome to round 3. We are on the draw, and we are up against Barra Vista. So, this hand is a fine hand. No one-drop sucks, but I don't think I can mulligan this hand. I'm going to lead off on a tap Temple Garden here. I imagine Thalia will be pretty good against any Scalding Turn deck. Sultai Triumph. This is probably just Sultai / bug control. So I'm going to lead out with the Thalia. If it gets mana leaked or remanded, that's okay. If it doesn't, though, I think we're in a great spot. If it does, we're just at parity here. Our best card in these kind of matchups is Vial, so it sucks not to have it in our hand, but obviously we can't know what they're playing before the round starts. So I'm just going to go for the Thalia here again. So it looks like Thalia is about to get either mana leaked or remanded again. Nope, Thalia is going to resolve, which is strong for us. Play the Windswept Teeth and pass the turn. Our 8 1-drops are pretty good against control. Reclaimer gets a lot of value because it gets to live generally for a long time. And Vial's just obviously as makes our spells uncounterable, so it's just insane against blue decks. Get a regular forest here. Temple Garden. So, the thing that sucks now is since Shark Typhoon's been printed, I can't really swing this Thalia in here. Because if they just Shark Typhoon for 3, this Thalia is just so bad. So what that means is I have to play my creature first to see if they tap out, which means I have to play into a Cryptic, which sucks. So I'm going to start out with my worst card in my hand, which I believe to be the Springbloom Druid. And see what happens. If we can get them to tap out, I'll swing a Thalia. If they don't tap out, I'll just accept the fact that my spell resolved and move to the next turn. Yep, there's the Cryptic command. And the life doesn't really matter, so I just want to get the different name lands for Field of the Dead in play. And then Thalia. So generally what this means is if they're going for this Cryptic here for 5 mana, instead of something like a Fatal Push on the Thalia, that Thalia is just going to stick around for the game, which is really good. Ghost Quarter is going to be nice to break up a Sanctuary loop at some point in this game. Jace the Mind Sculptor. So he gets to bounce my Thalia, which sucks, but it means I get to resolve 2 spells next turn, which is fine. Okay, so unfortunately we're short of that, which sucks. So I'm going to resolve my Thalia. Just going to play Eternal Witness. I'll play Eternal Witness or Sakura Tribelder is the question. I think I like Sakura Tribelder better because I can keep Witness for later value. And Steve still pressures the Jace well if he monsters on my Thalia. Because I need to make a play this turn that locks up my Titan, which is why something like the Dryad is not a great play here, I don't think. So Fate Sealing me means he thinks that he's pretty far ahead. And he doesn't want his Jace to die, because if he was behind, he would definitely brainstorm. I don't really like Fate Sealing there as a play, especially since we have the Sakura Tribelder in play, and he already has blockers with the Field of the Dead. Now, the question is, do I go for my Titan here? 4 mana. 4 cards in hand, 6 mana. Everything costs 1 more. The Jace ain't gonna die. I'm in a pretty rough spot if he has it, I think. But I don't think there's like... I guess he just have lands in his hand. I think I can just set up a really good turn with the Dryad plus the Reclaimer that I don't need to just play a Titan into something like a Mana Leak and get blown out. So, Eternal Witness is probably the least important card in my hand right now, but I think it's good to leave the Dryad first, because if they counter the Dryad, I can just get it back with the Eternal Witness. Because this turn, ideally, I want to play Dryad plus Reclaimer, because Dryad plus Reclaimer lets me set up next turn to get a Valakut with the Reclaimer and start bolting things. So I'm going to lead on the Dryad. Okay. So unfortunately, if I want to get a Valakut, I need to play the Reclaimer here, which sucks. And since I have a backup Thalia, I'm going to end up playing Reclaimer anyways. Do I want to swing my Thalia into the Jace? It's a pretty free attack, because if they fetch, I can just Ghost Quarter the Field of the Dead and still develop my Reclaimer. So yeah, I'm going to attack into the Jace with the Thalia. Growth Spiral here is worst case scenario, because now if they have a land initiative, Field of the Dead. So I guess I'm kind of forced to Ghost Quarter this, or they just get more zombies. So this could be a bluff, and they don't have the land, and they want to put a spell into play. But I think if their hands lands, I'm pretty far ahead anyways. So I'm going to fire off this Ghost Quarter on the Field of the Dead. They're just going to fetch in response. Okay. If they don't fetch here, I imagine they just have to have another Field of the Dead in their hand. So I don't think there's any chance they just don't let themselves not get a zombie here to block the Thalia. Yeah, that's just really bad for me. Alright, let's go for the Reclaimer. So any fetch or any way to put a land in the graveyard now turns this into a 3-4, which means it can attack into some board states where these other creatures can't. Like Thalia. It also blocks zombies really well. I think I'm pretty dead here, so I'm going to concede. The turning point in that game was just the Growth Spiral into the second Field of the Dead. So that allowed them to just hold a Misty and just get even more zombies, which was just disgusting. So Trada or Arasta is really strong here. I think even Mind Sensor is probably pretty good because it's flash and flying, and can also interact with their fetches at times I don't expect it. So I just want a lot of value in this matchup. So I don't think I really want any of my beaters. Like, I don't think Spring Bloom Druid is a really important card. It's just a poor card individually. It works really well when it's ramping out into things, but it's just not something that I don't think I need here. The game's going to go pretty long, so I should have time to develop my land drops and cast my big spells anyways. I like Ramunap. I don't really like Knight of the Reliquary. We have a land. I don't think Radiant Fountain's a great land to have in our deck. We still have 26 lands, which is loads. I'll trim a Courser as well. Courser's a fine card, but I think our other cards are just better. I think there's some merit to keeping a Courser over the second Aven Mind Sensor, but I guess we'll find out. So, this hand seems really awkward, but Aetherfall is such a strong card in this matchup, and we have Thalia plus Ramunap and Ghost Quarter, so like we can aggressively Ghost Quarter them. I'm going to keep. This means that we'll never just not get value from a land drop in a turn, as long as the Excavator is on the board, plus the Ghost Quarter. I also don't think they'll have Force Negation in their deck post-sideboard against me, so I think it's pretty safe to say that this Vial is a safe bet to resolve. I'm going to go for the second Vial. The second Vial there is a fantastic draw. So I think I'm going to upkeep this Thalia because I don't just want to let them be able to use their mana and Fatal Push it at the end of the turn. Generally, you want Thalia to come and play as soon as possible, but I think just letting their mana here is just not great. Or if they have to push it in their upkeep, I'll definitely do it now in response to this Growth Spiral. Because now they can't use the mana off the Growth Spiral to cast something like an Opt or a Thought Scour. Well, that Blast Zone is disgusting. This sucks because I want to be able to play my Steve, but I can't. So I think, but I can still play my Aven Mind Sensor for the turn. If I didn't have a play, I think I'd definitely consider Ghost Quartering my Field of the Dead and floating to colorless, and then getting a Forest, and then playing the Sakura Tribe Elder to catch back up on lands. But I think because I do have a 3-drop to play, I'm just fine developing my lands here. The Ghost Quarter on the Flagstones is also just a much better, I'm realizing now, to just hit the Flagstones instead of the Field of the Dead, because it's going to ramp me into a Temple Garden anyways. So that Flagstones was actually a great draw. I would love to see a fetch land and a fetch land popped here. Uro? Sure. So now I'm going to put this into play. Hopefully we can get a fetch land here. Because if they do have a fetch here and they put it into play, they would get to respond to the Aven Mind Sensor, which I don't want to be able to happen. Yeah, so there's the fetch. Okay. So unfortunately now I think I have to go for the play in the Ghost Quarter, but I'm going to do a post-combat. At least the Excavator will let us play all the lands that we just sacked back into play, which is pretty strong. Float. Ghost Quarter. Yes. And we can get a snow-covered forest from the Ghost Quarter. Yes, and we can get a Temple Garden from the thing. And we can play an Excavator. And replay the Flagstones per turn. There we go. The worst case here would be something like a Damnation for 5 mana. Let's see if they whiff on the Flooded Strand. I think he's either going to Abrupt Decay or they're going to push the Aven Mind Sensor in response. But they need the Revolt trigger to be able to kill it. That makes sense. And they're going to bring back Uro here. This is definitely a strong turn for them. Uro is such a powerful card. So I definitely want to get the value from playing my land, so I'm going to play my Ghost Quarter. Now, Nylea the Keen-Eyed. So that does lock up my Titan next turn, because it makes my creatures cost 1 less to cast. And it's also just a value engine now. Definitely no blocks on the Uro. Uro just, like, it's just one card that does everything. Generally, a lot of cards are bad. They're either really good early or they're really good late. But Uro's just always really good, is the issue with the card. And I love playing Uro. The card's fantastic, don't get me wrong. But just having a card that's just good literally in every situation, every time. Like, even if they put, like, a Rest in Peace in play, it's still going to gain 3 life cycle and ramp you. Like, that's fantastic. The graveyard. So if I let this happen, I can reveal it with Nylea in my upkeep and draw it again. And still get my draw step. But I don't think that's what I want to do. I think I want to develop my Titan. Because then that forces them... Because Cryptic's uncastable right now. So I'm going to put this on top. So now Cryptic is castable. But if they are casting Cryptic, they're shuffling away their Aether Gust. Which I think is good for me. So I'm going to go for a Titan. Definitely should have tapped that differently. I was forgetting that Nylea makes my my things cost 1 less, so I would have been able to hold up 1 green for Steve. But I think it's actually okay, because I can Ghost Quarter my Flagstones, get a basic Forest, and then set up for the lands to play with Excavator next turn, while also just playing my Steve, and getting up to enough lands for Field of the Dead. So definitely a minor mistake on my behalf there. Yes. Grab a regular Forest. Trigger Flagstones. Yes. Snow-covered plains. Play Sakura Tribe Elder. Get in for 2. This deck just has a lot of really weird and complex lines. Like, Nylea Keynote is generally not a card that I've played with, which has its advantages and disadvantages. It means that if you learn the deck really well, you can gain a lot of advantage. But it also means that you're going to come up with weird things a lot of the time that you've just never experienced. But the same thing can happen for the opponent, and you can get an advantage because of that. So I want to pop Steve here anyway, so I'm going to block. Another Uro. Gonna F6 there. I don't really have a response for anything that's happening. Okay. So, lead up with the Excavator. Try to get a land back from my graveyard. So we can trigger off this Field of the Dead. Sorry about that. Just had to deal with some. Looks like we're getting opted into Cryptic, and now he's going to set up the loop. So that's a bit annoying, but I'll get an activation out of Nylea here. I'll still get to develop my Reclaimer, which isn't too bad. Elder Gargaroth. I'll get the Reclaimer down. And then we're going to send in Thalia for 2. The cool thing about this is the Reclaimer can actually break up the Cryptic lock because it can get Bajuka Bog out of my deck. So we're not actually just locked out here. This probably means this probably just represents another sanctuary, which is annoying, but it's okay. The thing I don't want to see here is our reclaimer get killed. Yeah, it's not good. I can just activate now the upkeep to redraw it, so I'm gonna put it on top. So to stop my upkeep. Then on my upkeep, I'm gonna activate Nylea. Redraw the reclaimer. And still get my draw step. Okay. So now we know they have a cryptic, so I'm gonna send with Thalia first. Okay. So they're forced to counter this reclaimer essentially because the reclaimer breaks up the lock, but then we'll get to resolve the Dryad. Okay. To play the land, attack with Uro, redraw the cryptic. Just making sure the microphone was on there. We're going to need to get this Field of Dead online. Dryad's not a great draw there. Ellie again. I think we need to draw Sakura Tribuilder here to be able to beat the Cryptic, tap my team, and then we can, of course, sack it and get a zombie. But unfortunately, here now we are dead, and that's the match. So we are 2-1 in the league.